Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hi, welcome to the October 17th edition of Basis Loaded with Joe Schmit. I am Joe Schmit, and this episode, as always, is produced by Paige Driscoll with help from the EverAg Insights team. It's another epically beautiful fall day here in the upper Midwest. What better way to celebrate than with the latest from the NDPSR report? Let's start this week with butter. This butter number came in at 275.96. That is a plus 4 to the CME 1 week average of 272.05. Plus 4, a little bit above our expected basis. And that's with 90 loads trading at the CME last week. 90 loads trading on the CME last week at 266. And the manufacturer still able to maintain a plus 4 positive basis. So typically we would expect higher basis on a substantial move lower, as we're currently experiencing butter, moving from 320 down to 265, a big movement in price. A lot of volume traded at the CME last week as the market began to consolidate and found some support. We're trading almost twice that volume this week. So just a massive amount of weight changing ownership at the CME over the course of the last 2 weeks. Certainly interesting to see all that volume trade after we traded very little volume up at the 320 level. Volume here, even with all that weight trading at the exchange, volume on the NDPSR coming in a little bit over our expected 3.5 million pounds, but about a million under what we experienced last week. Certainly expect the volume on next week's NDPSR to pick up significantly, as I said, with all the volume that we're trading at the CME. And one of my favorite charts is the CME price, when compared to the NDPSR price, once again proving that the NDPSR butter price is very closely correlated with the CME weekly average, as the two indexes have just walked down from recent highs, hand in hand, moving equivalent amounts per week. Up next is cheese. We'll start with the block coming in at 221.62. That is a plus 5 to the CME 1 week average of 216.40. So plus 5, higher than expected basis. And as we move lower in the block, moving from, close to the 230 level down to 190, a 40-cent break in the block. On that kind of move lower, you would expect higher basis, and plus 5 qualifies for that. It's about twice our expected basis, and able to carry that plus 5 basis with 19 loads trading on the CME last week. So good volume in the block last week at the CME. And all in all, with this volume coming in just a little bit short of 10.5 million pounds. So volume on the low side, but all in all, the fact that the manufacturer was able to call a plus 5 positive basis on this move lower, and only 2 million short of our expected 12 million pounds, certainly have to call that a win for the manufacturer. Also in cheese, we have our barrel contract coming in at 236.87. Now that is a very nice price. That is a plus 9 to the CME 2 week average of 227.80. So the barrel now fully working lower, coming off of its all-time high at 260, as we put in a 1 week average of 188 after coming off that all-time high. On the way down, limited volume at the CME. We traded 6 loads on the CME last week, and that was a high week of the last 3 weeks. A total of 10 loads in 3 weeks traded at the CME after we had all that enthusiasm at the CME and they took prices up to 260. Only 10 loads trade on the return to normalcy in the barrel as it traded down below the 190 level. Now we're seeing volume once again at the barrel as the market is working its way back higher. What's interesting, with even only that 6 loads, the NDPSR volume is just a whopper, coming in north of 14 million pounds, 14,296. So big volume just off the all-time highs in the high 2-week average at the CME. Here, again, on the move lower, higher than expected basis. And the story in cheese this week is higher than expected NDPSR prices on both products, both blocks and barrels, higher than expected prices, certainly proving supportive for the October expiration. Up next is whey, 56.59. That represents a -3 to the CME 1-week average of 59.35. We traded just 2 loads at the CME last week, so not a lot of volume there. And again, with whey, we're always talking about prior week's NDPSR. And you remember last week, the prior week's NDPSR was that 54.40. So that was a penny and a half higher than the prior NDPSR. So I was expecting a penny and a half increase on this week's report. Didn't get that right. The NDPSR index increased 2 cents. So a little bit higher, similar to cheese, price here on the NDPSR report than what was expected by most. And at that level, 56.59, the manufacturer was able to sell north of 5.5 million pounds. So good volume and a really nice price, because that 56.59 is 2 cents premium to the September 28th NDPSR value of 54.40. So last week, the manufacturer was able to call a 2 cent premium over prior week's NDPSR, and at that elevated level, able to move north of 5.5 million pounds. Certainly a win for the manufacturer in whey. And then lastly, non-fat, 133.71. That represents a -3.5 to the CME 1-week average of 137.25. And then again, when it comes to non-fat, similar to whey, starting to look at prior week's NDPSR a little bit more closely. So at that 133.71, we're going to call that maybe a 2.5 cent premium over that September 28th benchmark of 131.12. And again, you'll notice from the September 28th number to the October 5th number, we have a little bit of an uptick in price. So I'm thinking that we can expect a little bit of an uptick on this NDPSR non-fat price on next week's report. We traded 13 loads at the CME last week. That's pretty decent volume, but still here on the NDPSR, just a little bit north of 15 million pounds. So falling short of our expected level. So this is week 204 for the October pricing cycle, currently getting an October Class 3 expiration of 22.87, Class 4, 21.05. So we have a fairly outsized Class 3, Class 4 spread. If you carry current CME equivalents out through the 5-week November pricing cycle, currently getting November Class 3 of 21.35 and a November Class 4 of 20.72. So we return to a normal Class 3, Class 4 relationship if all things hold at the CME. We'll see what they have in store for us in the weeks to come. Until then, on behalf of Paige and the entire EverAg Insights team, I'm Joe. See you next week. Bye.